Okay, I'm picking up right from where I left off on chapter 1. This is chapter 2 review for Monsters We Make. This chapter, let me see if I can actually show anything of it here. Let me look around. Yeah, I don't really see any safe part here. Well, there is no safe image that I am willing to use, so I'll just leave this shot of amazing gore. So chapter 2 begins with introducing us to the kind of school system. We're at New Eden Academy. This is the school talked about in the synopsis. Now, what's really cool about this segment is that aside from just introducing us to two of the main characters that we see in the group shots, I just realized I could show you the guys this screen instead. So in this one, we're introduced to this girl and this guy over here. So, cool thing about chapter 2 is that we learned that Jabari, he has a very special skill. He's very good at music. Now for these segments, I do think that there is still a lot of jargon going on, but it's not so bad. At this point, you know what? It might be worth talking about the bolding. There is a lot of bolded letters, or a lot of bolded words in the dialogue, and I don't fully understand why that is. Now, I've had a similar experience where I was putting italics on almost everything in one of my books, and I got like hit hard in the reviews for it, and I never really understood the problem until I started reading this one. So like, let me see here, and the big thing is just like, it's weird. It's like it draws the attention when you have like all of a sudden one random word bolded and the rest is not bolded. Like sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. I'm looking at one page here. Bolded words include ahem, September, which is the name, healthiest, silverbacks. Like, why is silverbacks bolded already? Champ. Now sometimes it feels like they bolded words that they wanted you to like take extra to like pay more attention to, but it's like, do I need to pay attention to slang? Was that really important? We introduced some more slang like nano in this one as well. I'm looking at, even on the other page of it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bolded words. It's just like, why does that keep happening? You know, if it was a novel review, you'd lose a lot of points for that. Like people, well, you'd lose a lot of like, your review score on Amazon would go down. Like that's 100% what would happen. There's just too much overemphasis. Like it doesn't need to be like this. I went very quickly and looked at Undead Unluck. I looked at My Hero Academia. They don't bold one random word in the middle of like regular text very often. They might bold the entire text bubble, but that doesn't happen very often. It sometimes became a little bit distracting. But this I think is a really pedantic point, but it might show up in reviews just because I've seen reviewers be pretty pedantic about this kind of stuff. Anyway, overall, in the first segment of that chapter, we find out that Jabari is super talented, and this is like the passageway for how he got into the school. So this little background spot and the art for it, like with the piano, I think it was actually really, really nice. I have nothing really bad to say about that otherwise. It was a nice, sweet flashback. Now, this chapter is, of course, exposition for the school. We get to see a guy that's kind of like a bully. We get to see the art for the school. It looks really neat. We're introduced to a character called Fane. We see that this girl right here, she's able to like exert some weight. You know, so that gives you the sense of like there's a fundamental relationship under there. There's like more going on below the surface. The thing with chapter 2 is that at this chapter we begin talking about the entrance exam and having to do things over, and the characters start to build some kind of mystery about this whole thing with that exam. I think overall it was a little bit annoying reading through it, because it's like, I don't think you guys are doing a good job of warning him if there is something wrong here. So it just felt kind of, I can feel the tension, so maybe that's on purpose. But everything, I don't think even with the advice that they were giving that this would have changed anything at all. I think they didn't do enough to try, and I think they did a good job of pointing out that there was something going on beneath the surface, but I don't think that they were going to be able to change anything that was about to happen. Heck, man, I'm not even sure if the guy was listening to her when she was giving him cryptic warnings. Now the next segment of the chapter involves the first meeting with the dean, just to kind of further ramp up the tension and the kind of mystery and the weirdness. One thing that I do enjoy here, and I think they should keep doing more of it, is that the characters are relatively self-aware about some of the strange things going on, or like some of the strange mannerisms and that kind of stuff. So I do appreciate the self-awareness, and I do think the self-awareness should continue. Now, one of the unfortunate things here, and I think this happens with writers who underestimate how much the reader can read their mind, is that there's some terminology about retaking the test or taking another test. And because other characters acknowledge the terminology of retake the test, while another character like goes out of her way to correct that terminology, you do create a little bit of confusion there that people have to be kind of careful of. Moving through there, we have another flashback sequence of Jabari, and we see that he might have something special going on with him. Again, you know what? I want to see more of the dad. I love the dad. That sequence with him and the dad was pretty awesome for chapter 2. A really strong point of chapter 2 is again the familiar relationships. I noted in my first chapter 1 review that later on things get better when you have like this group of characters kind of introduced into the situation. But like for chapter 2, they were still not at their best. So that's why chapter 2 is still not that great compared to the later chapters. Anyway, chapter 2 ends with Jabari pretty much walking to his exam, getting to see a little bit more of the mystery that's going on behind. We touch on some characters from the first chapter. We know that we are building up the world building. We get introduced to a police officer kind of thing. Our first indication of this guy's existence here. We have people calling Jabari a dog. So you're creating a metaphor of these guys are hounds. You know from the trailer and all that these guys are going to be fighting monsters, so like you gotta understand like that kind of mentality there. But overall, chapter 2 just ends off on I think a rather awkward dialogue choice. Okay, I'll just say it goes like prepare the hounds, but first there's something I need you to do. I don't think that should have been done like that. It's just kind of awkward. It's just because it makes the girl sound like she's like overriding her own commands, and it kind of like overwrites her authority a little bit. I would have just nixed the whole prepare the hounds. It feels like they wanted to say prepare the hounds, but then they're like, oh wait, but you gotta do this first. But like prepare the hounds sounds really cool. It sounds like that's what they ultimately wanted to do. They wanted the coolness, whereas story wise it didn't really make sense because something else has to happen first. A minor quip there, but yeah. Overall with chapter 2, I think it was a good setting establishing chapter, and again I love the segments with the dad. But now when you look at chapter 1 and chapter 2, like this is a pretty bad episode. This is a pretty bad first episode. Nothing of value really happens with Jabari here other than he's got to retake a test. This isn't good. It just isn't a good first episode. That's just fundamentally what it is. If I was watching this as an anime, I think this is a pretty dumb ending to a first episode. Everything cool is at the beginning, and then again, when you look at chapter 2, it really makes you feel like they did what they did for the first part because they know that chapter 1 and chapter 2's slice of life material is so dry and just it's like building up, right? So essentially the first little bit of the series is bait, and it's like a promise of like, yo bros, I know that we're gonna go through some pretty dry stuff here, but this is where we're going. Like this kind of intensity is what we're going to be getting at the end. And to some degree, I still feel like the first part, I think the art is more impressive in that first bit than it is for the later segments because of some things that happen here and there. But yeah, no, I would be very curious to know what exactly was the strategy here, and if there was an acknowledgement of like, yo, we need to do the slow part, so we gotta make sure we start off with a bang to make sure people are hooked, so that we can go through the slow part without bleeding readers. Now, one thing unfortunate that happens here, because like with manga, they get feedback every week on what they're doing pretty much. So there's a more active feedback loop here. Here you're kind of going in blind. Like for a novel, your first little bit of feedback would be on your first novel, and then you put out your second novel, you find out, oh shit, no one's buying it. It's rough. Like doing this approach is rough. Especially when you're trying to go for mass market appeal that you need in order to get that money. Again, though, Corey Kenshin had 20 million subscribers. He could push it, and he has the money. He could push it into success regardless. Alright guys, That is chapter. You know, I thinking about it, like I was really mean about this being a terrible first episode, but it is a terrible first episode by like all like standards of anime episodes. It's a terrible first episode because of the way it ends off. But as a novel, well, even as a novel, it still takes too long to get Jabari out of the. If we're looking at the hero's journey, it takes too long to get him out of the normal world and moving him into the special world that we know exists. Takes too long there. Yeah, this is definitely one of the, this is one of those. If this was a novel without the financial power of the person who wrote it behind it, this is one of those ones that I think people would be saying, oh, keep on reading, it gets better. And usually when you have to say that, you're in a really bad situation. Mind you, you're still making money. It's just you're not making explosive amounts of money. Hey everyone. You might notice I look a little bit different. It's because I'm coming in at the end of chapter 2 to add something here. Because thinking about it, I probably should address this one thing that's happening in the series. Now that I've also taken more time, I've read it one more time over. So, one legitimate criticism, and I've seen this one reflected in Reddit as well when I look for feedback, is that the characters are really, really, really stupid. And so, by chapter 2, there is a situation where when you read it, you can fundamentally say one thing, and that is character A or B is stupid, and there's no way around it because of fundamentally how the scene is structured. So as you go forward and you do see that they take advantage of this, there's a lot of ineptitude happening, and it just doesn't make sense, and it makes people look stupid. Chapter 3 I think has more of it because people aren't being called out for it properly. But with chapter 2, it was pretty significant, and I thought about it after I reread the manga. If you were to say that there is a problem with the series, it's definitely the stupidity of characters. And then at some point, it makes you feel like you deserve to fail given how stupid you are. Now, the higher level thing when it comes to character stupidity, it's always an issue of, was this the intention of the author? Because if the author intended for one of two parties to be stupid, then that's pretty good writing, because it's like it's intentional, like that's what you're doing, like that obviously it's intentional. But if the author didn't think it was stupid and instead it's coming off as stupid because to normal people it is stupid, then, or like another problem that happens is like if you have like some kind of logical conundrum, and the logic doesn't make sense, but everyone is saying it makes sense, but it's like no, that's not how that works, then it's stupid. Like that's where you find the deficiencies in writing. So it's hard to do this without being able to show the pages, but I don't want to show the pages because I don't want to screw anyone over. So bear with me for a second here, because the setup is actually based on what happens in chapter 1. I will spoil one of the words here, one of the speech bubbles here. And you know what, in the grand scheme of things, it's like a side piece of information. It's not going to spoil the whole story for you. In chapter 2, we have someone looking over the files of this girl right here. And as we see in this page, I can't really show you because of the way my screen is messing up here, but the girl's name is Callie, right? So in chapter 2, you have a situation where there is someone who says the following sentence: our priority is understanding Delta Team's insubordination. Now, us as readers, we have a sense of why they were insubordinate. That is, they went here without proper approval, and that was because they were looking for someone named Keiko. Alright, we got that, right? Callie wouldn't have entered without an exit plan. So, this is where the problem begins. It's because the person who is saying this is saying that there is a certain level of competence going on. And from the context of the situation, because the person calls what they did an unsanctioned hunt, they know that they were going after one of the creatures that we saw in the beginning, the leakers. They know that they were doing that. But fundamentally, when you look at this girl here, right, the person who is saying that sentence is making you think that this girl has a level of competence. Do you see competence in here? In the first chapter? I don't. I see a woman that was struggling to keep her team under control. She's constantly telling her team that we shouldn't be doing this. One of her team is like mouthing off to someone who might be dangerous, like an idiot. She has no control situation. So when you have person A saying that they wouldn't have entered without an exit plan, and then us as readers see that there is in fact no competent exit plan. There is no, the exit plan here was, let's say out loud that we're investigating and then let's run away. So the fundamental problem here comes, either person A is stupid in the sense that they are not able to actually gauge the capabilities of person B, Callie, or Callie just completely dropped the ball because she is supposed to be more competent. So that's the problem where we are at here. Fundamentally, when I get to the end of chapter 2, here is the fact. The person that says that Callie would not have entered there without an exit plan is just flat out wrong. And the reason, it's always the little things. The little things build up to a bigger problem. And when you go through the rest of the volume, other people as well have seen it, is that there is a lot of stupidity going on, and then people blame the main character when he's not being given the best tools. Like, we'll get to it later on because it's kind of annoying the way that they speak to him. But it is fundamental. It comes back to this whole thing of like, people are trying to say, like, it sounds like they want to say cool things, and I mentioned this earlier in the review. It sounds like at many points they want to say cool things, or they want to draw one particularly good scene, but then the way that you get to the cool thing, visually or dialogue wise, it's just kind of nonsense. You're just saying stuff to say stuff. You're just drawing stuff to draw stuff. That's what it feels like at times, especially in the earlier part of the manga. Anyway, that's what I was adding in there. That's actually probably like the most critical I've been so far, because it is a fundamental problem. What does that speak to in terms of a writing problem or a problem with the writers? What does that speak to? Honestly, these kind of things. Okay, so like I write like maybe 3 million words in a year, if I did the count right. Between 2 million and 3 million words in a year. And I write stories super fast, right? Like, sometimes it just happens. Sometimes you write something and you don't think it through. Usually, if you're writing a novel, I do like about 3 revisions, so I can kind of catch it if I'm lucky. But if it's something that's fully outside of anything I've ever considered, then it's going to be something that happens. For this, because we don't know the level of rush that occurred, we don't know how quickly they were trying to get these parts of the story through, it's kind of hard to say whether or not this is actually indicative of the quality of the writers, or if this is just, like a side effect of just trying to get this done, and not really like going back and looking over it. Or like, again, we also don't know how intentional is this, because fundamentally, if you say, well, Buddy Girl that made the comments about Callie, she is actually legitimately stupid, so like this is just one aspect of it. Or Callie just dropped the ball fundamentally because, like, you could say that she's actually not all that great, right? If it's all intentional, then great, but right now the way it stands is that there's a lot of incompetency going on, and it'll be hard to really tell what's going on until we see like the future. If we continue to see the same problems here, and if we continue to see the Corey Kenshin fan saying that the story is hard to follow or something like that. Anyway, that's it for chapter 2 review. I hope you have a really, really great day. Thank you for watching.